Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So,
Amen.
thank you. We are at Parshat vaYeshev, and now we begin the last four parshiot of the book of Genesis. And I always look at this time when we sort of move towards this particular place with a certain wistfulness too. This is perhaps some of the most beautiful literary writing in the entire Torah, is this narrative and this brilliantly written story about Joseph and his brothers and family dynamics, and how what's so interesting is you don't hear God speaking. The Torah does not quote God speaking to anybody in this particular story, and yet we are told at the end of the story how the hand of God is involved in all of this and in what happens. And in one other place, I believe, possibly in the Gemara or in the Midrash, it says, that for the sake of a simple mantle, right, the coat of many colors, our ancestors were enslaved in Egypt. It's sometimes little things have a tremendous effect on big things. So we're going to go into I'm going to go into the text right now. We're going to pick it up, and I'll explain where we had left off last year. And where we are right now is towards the end of the story of Judah and Tamar. So we had started off with the story of Joseph. We had read about how Joseph was sold by his brothers to the Ishmaelites. He was sold quite a few times, and he winds up in Egypt. And then the story breaks off to talk about Judah and Tamar and that issue there, and how Judah sleeps with his daughter-in-law, and yet the understanding of the Torah is very clear that Tamar's intentions were strictly to provide seed for her husband, for her departed husband, and that it was in actual fact a type of levirate situation. And that's the reason why she cohabited with Judah. And here we are at her becoming pregnant. We have that whole story about how Judah doesn't realize that it was Tamar that he was with, that he sees that she's pregnant, and that she's accused of becoming pregnant while a widow and unmarried, and she's to be stoned. And then she shows Judah his seal and signet, so he recognizes the fact that he is the father who caused her pregnancy. And Judah, in a moment, this is an amazing moment for Judah, says basically, leave her alone. She's more righteous than I am. And yeah.
I was wondering, is the Levite applied today too? Does that apply today, that Levite?
You mean levirate? That's how.
Yeah, whatever they call it.
Okay, yes, no. So yes, there are certain circumstances where a levirate situation is mandated. However, it is not practiced because the Torah does give an out for that situation, and the levirate relationship was such that engaging in relations had to be purely for the sake of having a child and for no other reasons whatsoever. And back already in Talmudic times, they felt that it was not possible for people to engage in that way, which in effect, of course, having relations with your daughter-in-law is considered to be incest. So they don't do it. There is this ceremony called chalitza, and that's what they do. So they perform this ceremony of chalitza, and essentially we do not practice levirate marriages, but we still engage in the mitzvah. So, okay.
I think it's really interesting that it's a goes around, comes around thing.
Yes.
Because of the issue that comes from this, also later on, there is another Levirate marriage that brings it all home circle and brings us to David.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right. Although although marrying your niece-in-law, okay, is not considered incest.
No, because it's an in-law. Yeah.
Right. Right.
No.
Well, no, you can't say that. You're not allowed to have relations with your daughter-in-law or your sister-in-law or any, I don't believe so.
True.
In-law,
However, from us looking at it,
yeah,
there's really nothing seriously wrong with it. It's morally
yes,
creepy, but it's not
right. Well,
wrong
right.
in the
So
grand scheme of things because she was a widow. So,
indeed,
yeah.
indeed. Right, but you're right. It was a levirate situation,
Mhm.
and her levir, in fact, did not choose to marry her. But Boaz marrying Ruth was, I think, a free situation. I don't
Yes.
was a levirate situation. All right, let's thanks. No. That was a great connection. You're right. You're right. So she's now at the end of her pregnancy. And the story continues just to finish this episode. Vahi belidata vayiten yads. So as she was giving birth, one of the infants gave its hand, put out its hand, stretched out its hand. Vaitikacha meyaledet. And so the midwife took vatikshor al yado shani. She took and bound on his hand scarlet thread on the newborn, right, the one who was about to be born. Lamor thinking ze yatsa rishona, so that she'd know, because remember she was pregnant with twins, and she said this one came out first. This one was firstborn. Vahi, however, kimeshiv yado v'hine yatsa achiv. However, he withdrew his hand. When he withdrew his hand, behold, his brother came out. Vatomer, and so she said, "Ma paratzta." Assuming this is the midwife saying, "Ma paratzta alecha paretz." How you have committed a breach, right, for yourself. Vayikra Shmo Paretz. And so the name of this newborn was Peretz. It's Paretz because that's a pausal form, because it's at the end of the sentence, right? And again, Paretz is a pausal form, and the etnachta, this is this little wishbone here, is the main division of the sentence. So the name is actually Peretz. And we come across that name subsequently too, but that's what it means. So let's take a look at the Rashi. Vayiten yad. He put forth his hand. Hutzi ha'echad yado lachutz. So one of them stretched out his hand outside. Ulachar shekashra al yado, and after she had tied this scarlet thread on his hand, yado hasheni is the scarlet thread, right? After she tied the scarlet thread on his hand, hechazira, he withdrew his hand. So that's just describing very clearly what happened. So paratzta from Peretz, right? Chazakta alecha chozek means you acted with determination, something like that. You were determined to come out first. And we see here somewhat of a similar situation to Esau and Jacob, right? We have twins, we have this situation. So we're going to look and see. Va'achar yatsa achiv, and after this, his brother came out, asher al yado hashani, on whose hand was the scarlet thread, vayikra shmo Zarach, and she called his name Zarach, to shine, right? Like to the sun, when the sun comes out, that's what Zarach, we talk about Zrichat HaChama, the coming out of the sun, the sun shining. Okay. Asher al yado hashani, upon whose hand was the scarlet thread. And he says, if Rashi says, Arba yadot ktuvot kan. He says that there are 4 hands, that the word hand is written 4 times here. So let's take a look, right? Here's number 1, right? Here's number 2. Here's number 3. And let's take here, and here's number 4. 4 times. So let's take a look. Arba yadot ktuvot kan, keneged arba charamot shema'al achan sheyatza mimenu. So a hand represents human agency, right? It can represent power. It represents some kind of action on the part of a person. And as such, it can, and control, right? Essentially control. That's what a hand represents. So there were 4 sacrileges. Shema al Achan. This is a man by the name of Achan in the book of Joshua, who defrauded the Lim'ol Ma'al, has to do with defrauding specifically the sanctuary. So, for example, if you use sacrificial food to feed yourself, right? Or you use, let's say they have some kind of vessel in the sanctuary, and it's dedicated for sanctuary use, and you use it for yourself. That is something called me'ilah. And it's essentially understood to mean defrauding the sanctuary. And it's considered to be very disrespectful, and actually is a very serious kind of thing. At any rate, this person, Achan, defrauded in 4 different kinds of ways. So in the book of Joshua, we read how after the Israelites capture, I believe it's Jericho, they're told, and they're of course very successful, they're told not to take anything for their own personal use, and Achan does this. He commits this particular act of fraud. Vayesh omrim, and there are those who say, keneged arba devarim, that it has to correspond with the 4 specific things that he took. Aderet shinar, he took a shinar mantle. Shinar is a region of Babylonia. So this is something apparently that they used to make there. It's associated with that area. Ushtei chatichot kesef, and 2 pieces of silver. So that's 3. Shel 200 shkalim, that were 100 shekels. That's quite a large amount of silver. Velashon zahav, and a strip of gold. So these are the 4 things that he took. And that's got to do with his exerting control and not allowing God to be in control there. So the sentence ended with the brother, right? The brother who was born second, but who had stretched out his hand first. Vayikra shmo Zarach al shem zrichat marit hasheni. So Rashi says this is because of how brightly the scarlet thread was shining, or how it looked, or something like that. So again, the Peretz has to do with what Peretz did. Zerach also has to do with what Zerach did in his putting out his hand. So they're both referred to by their activity at birth. And that concludes, let's see, right. That's it for that particular aliyah and chapter. Going on. So the story now returns, now that we finished this side story with Judah, which actually is an essential part of the development of this narrative. Okay. vaYosef, it goes on now back to Joseph. vaYosef hurad Mitzrayma. Joseph was taken down to Egypt. Vayiknehu Potiphar, and Potiphar bought him. Ceris Paro, just describing Potiphar's position. Potiphar was a courtier of pharaohs. Sar HaTabachim, Sar would be the chieftain. Tabach is a butcher, okay, or a meat dresser. And you see that the letter Tet and the letter Zion are actually connected. They both come out of the same part of the mouth. A t and a z, both are that come in the same way. And so if we substituted a zayin for this, it would be zavachim, which means, of course, offerings, meat offerings. So they're related words. At any rate, he had some official position, and it was a major position in Pharaoh's court. Ish Mitzri, an Egyptian man, Miyad HaMishmaelim, he bought him from the Ishmaelites, Asher Horiduhu Shama, who had taken him down to Egypt, taken Joseph down to Egypt. Take a look and see. All right. Back to this little Rashi, starts over here. Just one word, vaYosef, right? And Joseph, Hurad, was taken down. So this significance of the word Hurad goes down, went down. And just to go back to the Judah story, I believe it says Vayered Yehuda. It also uses the same verb of going down, to go down. So he says, Kozer li'inyan rishon. So he's telling you the story is now going back to the first subject. Ela shehifsik bo. However, it interrupted the narrative. Kedei lismoch yeridato shel Yehuda, in order to connect the going down, right, of Judah's going down, the mechirato shel Yosef, to the sale of Joseph. Lomar, to tell you, Lacha, shebishvilo, because on account of what Judah did, horiduhu migdulato. So Judah was initially the preeminent brother, and after the sale of Joseph, he no longer was considered the preeminent brother. That's essentially what I understand Rashi to tell us. And what's happening here is that we know that we have these two major foreshadowing. Yes?
Who became the preeminent brother?
Good question. I'm not sure. Doesn't tell us here. But we know later on. Okay, this is all going to be a transitional time for both these people, for both Joseph and Judah. And we know that subsequently, I was going to say that this is a foreshadowing, clear foreshadowing of what subsequently happened, because we know that Joseph's son Ephraim, right, many years later became preeminent, and we have the northern kingdom of Israel, which was essentially governed by Ephraim. Okay, sometimes it's referred to as Ephraim, and we have the southern kingdom of Judah. And so we have this play of one brother against the other, or with the other, and in a sense, this is now a foreshadowing of what's going to happen much later on. So let's go on with the Rashi here, right? So lomar lacha. Okay, sorry, we finished that. Va'od, and moreover, kedei lismoch ma'aseh ishto shel Potifar, because if we're somewhat familiar with this narrative, it's saying in order to connect the actions or the incident of Potiphar's wife, let ma'aseh Tamar, to what happened with Tamar. And in what sense? Lomar lacha, to inform you, ma zo l'shem shamayim, that just as Tamar was doing it for the sake of heaven, meaning purely for the sake of providing seed for her deceased husband, and for no other reason, af zo l'shem shamayim. And this is so cool, because if we just read the biblical text, we would judge Potiphar's wife. And of course, she's not Jewish. She's not a member of the Israelites. But we are being told by our tradition that Potiphar's wife's intentions when she tried to seduce Joseph were purely for the sake of providing a child. Now, it's possible that the reason why we would say she'd want to do that is because the word saris can also mean a eunuch. So it's possible that she wanted a child for her husband. And so and here we go, the Shem Shamayim, for the sake of heaven, Shira'ata be'itztrologin shela, because she saw in her astrological forecast, she'atida la'amid pamim mimenu, that in the future she would have sons from him, from Joseph. Ve'ena yodat, and she did not know, im mimena im mibita, whether or not that meant from herself or from her daughter. And later on, when we read about who Joseph marries, it's Osnat bat Potiphera, daughter of Potiphera, and Potiphera and Potiphar are one and the same. So subsequently, Joseph does in fact marry her daughter, but she didn't know that at the time. Just purely coincidentally, we read, when I was in rabbinical school and studying Arabic, we were reading a little bit of the Quran, which has the Joseph story in it. And it's so interesting that the Quran says specifically that that Potiphar's wife had no intention of acting lasciviously, and that her intention was to have a child. And it's so interesting to think that possibly the Quran was affected by Jewish tradition and the Jewish traditional way of understanding Potiphar's wife's motives. Onwards, a little bit more. So, Vayhi Hashem et Yosef, and God was with Joseph. Vayhi ish matzliach, and he was a successful person. I want you to know that the term ish often means a person of note. In other words, someone of great character or power or something like that. But he was successful. Vayhi bevet Adonav Hamitzri, and he was in his master, the Egyptian's house. There is no Rashi on this. Vayar Adonav ki Hashem ito, and his master saw that Hashem was with him, was with Joseph. V'chol asher hu oseh, and when it came to anything that he would do, that Joseph would do, Hashem matzliach beyado. Hashem would cause to succeed under his power, under his hand, literally. Rashi on this. So what does it mean that he saw how God was with him, how Hashem was with him? Shem shamayim shagur befiv, because he would speak quite fluently, Joseph would speak quite fluently about his belief and his belief in God. Next verse. Vayimtza Yosef chen be'einav. It says Joseph found favor in his eyes. So his Potiphar clearly approved of Joseph very much. Vayisharet oto, and he served him. He served Potiphar. Vayafkidehu al beito, and Potiphar in his turn appointed Joseph over his household. V'chol yeshlo natan biyado, and anything he had in his possession, he gave under his control. See, there's the yad, the word yad, and how it implies control of something. So anything was put under Joseph's control. V'chol yeshlo dalet, everything he had. Hare lashon katsar. So he says this Hebrew here is somewhat over abbreviated, and it says that's lashon katsar, chaser asher. So in other words, v'chol asher yeshlo, and everything that he had. So it doesn't say that here. It says v'chol yeshlo, and here it says v'chol asher yeshlo. You notice there. See if there's Rashi goes on at all here. No. So back to Dalit. Okay. No, we on to Hay. Vayhi me'az hifkido to beveto, and it was that once he had appointed him over his household, v'al kol asher yeshlo, and over everything, over his possessions, all his possessions. By Varech Hashem, and Hashem blessed et Beit HaMitzri Biglal Yosef. He would bless the house of the Egyptian on account of Joseph. Vahi Birkat Hashem b'chol asher yeshlo, and it was that the blessing of Hashem was present in everything that he had, babayit uvasadeh, both inside his home and outside his home, at home and in the field. Okay, so there's no Rashi on this either. A little bit more. Vayazov kol asher lo b'yad Yosef, and Potiphar understood, left everything that he had under Joseph's control. V'lo yada ito ma'uma, and he did not concern himself over anything here. Okay, it literally means, and he did not know with him anything. Ki im halechem asher hu ochel. So essentially it's saying Joseph had complete control over everything, ki im halechem asher hu ochel, except for the bread which he ate, which Potiphar ate. And Rashi's going to tell us that that is a euphemism, and we'll see what the euphemism is. Vahi Yosef Yefei Toar v'Yefei Ma'er, and Joseph was beautiful of form and beautiful of visage. So he was a good-looking hunk. He was a great-looking guy, and this is what also supports the idea that lechem asher hu ochel, the bread which he ate, is not talking about bread at all. Okay, let's take a look. V'lo yada ito uma, and the Potiphar didn't concern himself over anything. Lo haya noten libo lachlum. He would not give his attention to anything. He left it all up to Joseph. Ki im halechem. So here goes. Except for the bread. He ishto. What is that really referring to? It's referring to his wife. His wife. Ella. So why does the Torah put it this way? Ella medaber b'lashon nekiyah. It says, but the Torah chose to speak euphemistically, did not want to talk explicitly about this. And that's why you see the connection of Joseph being a good-looking man and Potiphar's wife being desirous of having relations with him. Let's see here. Okay, and Joseph was beautiful of form. Kevan shira'atz mo moshel, that once Joseph saw that he had control and command, itchil ochel v'shoteh u'misalsel b'sa'aro, so he began to eat and to drink and to curl his hair. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so the Holy One basically he said, Avicha mitabel, your father is mourning for you, v'ata misalsel b'sa'arecha, and you're curling your hair, megareh b'cha et hadov. Sorry, ani megareh, this is an ani, megareh b'cha et hadov, I am going to incite the bear against you. And again, the bear, of course, is a euphemism. All right, so let's stop here. Here.
Rabbi, is there any discussion that Potiphar and Potiphara, etc., are titles or a a position held title? Because sure. Later on, it doesn't seem that that's the same possible unless this wife left her husband and and went to own. So I don't know.
I'm not sure what you're referring to here.
Oh, because you said earlier that that Joseph ended up marrying a daughter of this particular woman.
Oh, okay. Yes.
But she must have left this guy.
I see.
To go to the other to have a
there
child,
we go. Okay.
Because it says own, the daughter of the priest of On.
Okay, so
unless he is the priest of On,
yes, and he could have been. When it says Sar HaTabachim, remember, it could have been that he acted as a priest and he slaughtered the animals for sacrifices.
Now that could make sense.
Yeah, there are ways to make sense of this.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Yeah, of course, and the fact that if we translate Saris as eunuch, how did he have a daughter? Okay, but first
Or
of all,
when did he have a daughter, and did
well,
he
that's
stop
true.
having relations with his
That's
wife
true.
because he became a priest or something?
And maybe so. This all is stuff we could speculate about, quite honestly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have 10, by the way.
Right. So let me stop the share, and I'm going to stop the recording.